Illegal immigration is one of the most divisive and complex issues in the United States today. Behind the statistics and political battles lie real people whose journeys are shaped by poverty, violence, instability, and the dream of opportunity. The United States is home to over 10 million undocumented immigrants, and the majority come from just a handful of countries. In this video, we reveal the 10 nations most responsible for undocumented migration to the U.S., explain the push and pull factors that drive people across borders, and highlight the profound implications for American society and policy. If you watch to the end, you'll understand not only where undocumented immigrants are coming from, but also why these flows are changing the U.S. in ways that affect everyone. Subscribe to Global Lens for more in-depth explorations of the forces shaping our world. Chapter 1. Mexico, the longtime leaders. Mexico has always been central to America's immigration debate. As of 2022, an estimated 4 million Mexicans were living in the U.S. without legal status, representing roughly 37% of the total undocumented population. Although this share is lower than in the 1990s, when Mexicans accounted for more than half of all unauthorized immigrants, the country remains the single largest source of illegal migration. Economic drivers dominate the story. Many Mexican families live in rural areas with limited access to stable jobs. Wages in agriculture and manufacturing are low, and informal employment leaves workers vulnerable. For decades, migration north offered higher pay for the same labor, especially in construction, hospitality, and farming. Violence is another factor. Drug cartels and organized crime have destabilized regions across Mexico, forcing people to flee extortion, kidnappings, and murder. Safety becomes a powerful incentive to cross the border. Family reunification further fuels migration, since large Mexican-American communities already exist in states like California, Texas, and Illinois. Recent years show some decline. Fertility rates in Mexico have dropped, reducing the pool of young workers likely to migrate. Economic growth, though uneven, has improved in some areas. Combined with tighter border enforcement and deportation programs, these changes explain why new arrivals from Mexico have slowed. Still, geographic proximity and long-established ties guarantee that Mexico will remain central to the U.S. immigration landscape. Chapter 2. El Salvador, a nation under siege. El Salvador has roughly 750,000 undocumented nationals living in the U.S., a striking figure for a small country. Migration is driven by violence, poverty, and instability that show little sign of abating. Gang violence is perhaps the most visible factor. For years, El Salvador had one of the world's highest homicide rates, much of it tied to gangs such as MS-13. Young people are often given a brutal choice: join or be targeted. Families face extortion and the constant threat of violence. These conditions leave many with no option but to leave. The economy offers little relief. Unemployment and underemployment remain high, and many households rely on remittances from family members abroad. Infrastructure is fragile, and public services are inadequate. Natural disasters, from earthquakes to hurricanes, periodically devastate the country, erasing years of progress and pushing more people to migrate. U.S. policy plays a complicated role. Many Salvadorans have been granted temporary protected status, which allows them to remain legally due to unsafe conditions back home. Yet this program is temporary and subject to political shifts, leaving families uncertain about their future. The constant threat of policy change creates a climate of anxiety, even among those who have built lives in the U.S. Chapter 3. India, the emerging source. India has become one of the fastest-growing sources of undocumented immigrants. By 2022, around 725,000 Indians were estimated to live in the U.S. without legal status. Unlike Central American migrants fleeing violence, many Indians arrive through different pathways. One major driver is visa overstays. Many Indians come on temporary work, tourist or student visas, but remain after expiration, unable to secure permanent legal status. Others use sophisticated smuggling networks that charge tens of thousands of dollars to facilitate irregular entry, often through routes spanning multiple countries. Economic motivation is strong. India's population is young, ambitious, and increasingly urban. Many are educated and seek high-paying jobs abroad that are scarce at home. The U.S. tech industry attracts skilled workers, but restrictive visa caps create bottlenecks. For those shut out of legal channels, illegal migration appears to be the only path. The demographic profile is distinctive. Most undocumented Indian migrants are men aged 18 to 34, and many are not escaping absolute poverty but seeking upward mobility. Their story underscores how limited visa availability, combined with global aspiration, can drive irregular migration even from rising economies. Chapter 4. Guatemala, the dangerous journey north. Guatemala accounts for about 675,000 undocumented immigrants in the United States. The country's conditions are severe. Poverty is widespread, with many rural families unable to secure consistent food or employment. Violence from gangs and domestic abuse adds daily insecurity. Guatemala's homicide rate remains among the highest in the world, especially in urban centers. Natural disasters compound these challenges. Hurricanes, floods, and earthquakes have destroyed infrastructure and displaced communities repeatedly. When livelihoods vanish overnight, migration becomes a survival strategy. The demographics reveal a young, predominantly male migrant population, though entire families increasingly make the journey together. The path north is perilous, passing through Mexico, where migrants face extortion, kidnapping, and exploitation. Reports of robbery and sexual violence are common. Once in the U.S., Guatemalan immigrants often find work in low-wage industries such as agriculture and meatpacking. Yet without legal protections, they are vulnerable to abuse and live under the constant fear of deportation. Despite the risks, rising numbers continue to attempt the journey, with border apprehensions of Guatemalans increasing sharply in recent years. Chapter 5. Venezuela, a crisis without end. Venezuela's collapse has produced one of the largest displacement crises in modern Latin America. By 2022, approximately 270,000 Venezuelans lived in the U.S. without legal status. The causes are clear. Hyperinflation has destroyed the economy, leaving wages worthless and basic goods unaffordable. Medicine and food are scarce, hospitals lack supplies, and millions live in extreme poverty. Political repression under successive governments has silenced dissent, with activists and journalists facing imprisonment or worse. Many Venezuelans are educated professionals, including doctors and engineers, who cannot sustain themselves under current conditions. They embark on long journeys through Colombia, Central America, and Mexico to reach the U.S. Along the way, they face criminal gangs, dangerous terrain, and exploitation. Some Venezuelans qualify for temporary protected status in the U.S., but many remain undocumented, caught in a system that has yet to adapt fully to the scale of their displacement. Their story reflects how economic collapse and authoritarian rule create powerful push factors that transcend geography. Chapter 6. The Philippines. Historical ties, modern challenges. The Philippines has deep historical connections with the U.S., stemming from the colonial era and labor migration programs of the 20th century. Today, around 310,000 Filipinos live in the U.S. without authorization. Economic drivers are central. High unemployment and underemployment push many to look abroad. Migrants often work in healthcare, domestic service, and caregiving, sectors where U.S. demand is high. Family reunification is another important factor, with Filipino communities long established in California, Texas, and Hawaii. A significant share of undocumented Filipinos arrive legally and later overstay visas, creating a population sometimes referred to in Filipino slang as TNT, or hiding and hiding. Others use smuggling routes that are costly and dangerous. Challenges mirror those of other undocumented groups: limited access to healthcare and education, exploitation in the workforce, and constant fear of deportation. Yet their contributions to caregiving and essential services remain vital to the U.S. economy. Chapter 7. China. Growing numbers, growing concerns. Chinese nationals make up an estimated 400,000 undocumented immigrants in the U.S. Their reasons for leaving are varied. Some flee political repression, including persecution of dissidents and religious minorities. Others come from rural poverty, where opportunities remain limited despite China's economic growth. Education plays a unique role. Many Chinese students study in American universities, but some overstay their visas after graduation, either because of limited opportunities at home or the desire to remain in the U.S. Others arrive via smuggling networks that use circuitous routes through Latin America. Chinese immigrants often settle in large metropolitan areas such as New York, Los Angeles, and San Francisco, where established communities provide support. They face familiar challenges: vulnerability to exploitation, lack of legal protections, and fear of deportation. Their growing presence highlights how migration from Asia, not just Latin America, is shaping the undocumented population in the U.S. Chapter 8. Colombia. The lingering legacy of conflict. Colombia contributes about 130,000 undocumented immigrants. Decades of armed conflict involving guerrilla groups, paramilitaries, and drug cartels have left a legacy of displacement and insecurity. Although Colombia has made progress with peace agreements, violence and instability persist. Economic hardship and corruption remain widespread, pushing people to seek stability abroad. Many Colombians initially enter the U.S. legally but overstay visas when conditions at home deteriorate. In the U.S., Colombians are concentrated in cities like New York, Miami, and Los Angeles. They are diverse, including professionals, families, and workers in service industries. Their story illustrates how even partial peace at home does not erase the structural inequalities and violence that drive migration. Chapter 9. Brazil. Economic struggles and political uncertainty. Brazil is the source of around 200,000 undocumented immigrants in the U.S. As South America's largest country, Brazil's migration drivers differ from its neighbors. Despite being a major economy, Brazil struggles with high unemployment, inflation, and deep inequality. Political turmoil and corruption scandals have eroded trust in institutions, prompting many to leave. Rising crime and violence in major cities add to the pressures. Brazilians often arrive on tourist or student visas and later overstay. Others travel through long routes across the hemisphere to reach the U.S. Many settle in Florida, Massachusetts, and California, where Brazilian communities are well established. Their experience demonstrates how even relatively prosperous countries can produce large flows of undocumented migration when economic and political crises persist. Chapter 10. Dominican Republic, Caribbean, flows to the mainland. The Dominican Republic contributes about 164,000 undocumented immigrants to the U.S. Migration from the island has been steady since the 1980s, driven by economic challenges, political instability, and strong family networks. Many Dominicans arrive legally on temporary visas and later overstay. Others use smuggling routes through the Caribbean. Established communities in New York, Miami, and Boston act as magnets, offering support and opportunity. Undocumented Dominicans often work in construction, hospitality, and small businesses. Like others without status, they face barriers to education and healthcare, along with the constant risk of deportation. Yet their cultural and economic contributions to U.S. cities are undeniable. The story of undocumented immigration into the United States cannot be explained by a single cause. Each of the top 10 countries reveals a different set of push factors: geography, poverty, violence, political repression, visa restrictions, and family ties. Mexico continues to lead because of proximity and history. El Salvador and Guatemala show the devastating impact of violence and instability. India and China illustrate how ambition and blocked legal pathways create new patterns. Venezuela, Colombia, Brazil, the Philippines, and the Dominican Republic each highlight how crises and inequality drive people to take extraordinary risks. Together, these migration flows shape the demographics, economy, and politics of the United States. Understanding them is essential for creating policies that balance border security, humanitarian responsibility, and economic reality. Thank you for watching Global Lens. If you found this video insightful, make sure you subscribe, like, and share. Turn on notifications so you never miss our next deep dive into the trends reshaping the world.